We all know the saying, don't count your chickens before they're hatched. I once had a colleague who was a bit of a pessimist, but he defended himself by saying a pessimist is merely an optimist with experience. If there ever was an optimist, it surely must be the so-called mad Englishman of this story. This is the story of William Edmund Scarbrow, the founder of Bridgetown, a town that was never developed, called after a bridge that was never built. If you Google Bridgetown, two towns, one in Barbados and another in Western Australia, pop up. South Africans may recognize Bridgetown as the end of the second leg of the annual Berg River Canoe Marathon, but that's about it. During the 1800s, people traveling inland from Cape Town hit two major obstacles, mountain ranges and rivers. The Berg River was the first one they encountered, initially only to be able to cross at so-called drifts during the dry season. These crossings were where the river banks allowed the wagons to drive down to the water's edge and where the river was not too deep. South Africans will recognize places like Kalkoentjies Drift and Katreintjies Drift here. Later pontoons, or ponts as river ferries guided by cables are called in South Africa, were established at some such drifts. Some of these were later replaced by bridges. Perhaps the most well-known historic bridge still in use today is the Lady Loch Bridge at Wellington, a declared national monument. The original wooden bridge, built in 1853, was replaced by an iron bridge in 1910. It claims to be the first and thus the oldest all-steel bridge entirely constructed in South Africa. But the bridge in our story is about 50 years older, meaning that it was imported, already built. But back to the mad Englishman. On 25 April 1843, the schooner Margaret arrived in Cape Town from Australia under command of Captain William Edmund Scarbrow. On board is a flock of sheep, mainly stud rams, destined as breeding stock in South Africa, which he soon auctioned. Scarbrow also sells the Margaret and 6 months later buys the 7,000-acre farm Fledermys Drift. The farm straddles the Berg River at the drift on the main road from Malmesbury to the north. With the knowledge that towns arise at places like crossroads and drifts where people gather, Scarbrow starts dreaming about a bridge over the river and renames the farm Bridgetown in anticipation. He immediately starts by building an impressive house on the riverbank and orders his wife Emma to join him from England. Leaving no stone unturned to establish his town, he builds a blacksmith shop, a mill, a shop, as well as a pond over the river. To secure a source of lumber, he established plantations irrigated by culverts fed by the river. To demonstrate his intentions to the government, Scarbrow also established a regular postal service to Bridgetown. It so happened that the South African government was busy setting up a central board road at the time, but as we all know today, the gears of governments turn slowly. Having spent all his funds chasing his dream, Scarbrow was forced to supplement his income. He thus went back to what he knew best, that is commanding a ship. In 1852 he became the captain of the schooner Blonde, belonging to the firm Deslands. On a voyage from Jersey to Africa, his schooner never arrived at its destination. As we will later see, the story of Bridgetown did not end with the passing of William Scarbrow. As mentioned before, just 1 year after Scarbrow's death, the Central Road Board got going with building the first wood bridge over the Berg River at Wellington in 1853, soon to be followed by the Lady Grey Bridge in Paarl in 1858 and the Franz Hoek Bridge a year later. 2 years before Scarbrow's passing, in 1850, a ship from England to Australia arrived in Table Bay. After springing a leak underway, it needed emergency repairs. It so happened that this ship was carrying a steel bridge destined for Australia with a total length of 110 meters, broken into 3 parts for transport. In order to do the repairs, the bridge needed to be offloaded. It so happened that a ship with a crane large enough to handle the bridge was in Table Bay, and the bridge was duly offloaded. However, by the time the repairs were finished, the crane ship since departed. After numerous attempts failed to get the bridge sections back on the ship, it was sold to the Central Road Board. It took a few years for the Road Board to decide where to erect this bridge. One of the folklore is that it wasn't long enough to span the river at Bridgetown. However, with the help of Google Earth these days, it's very easy to verify this. As can be seen, its 110 meters would easily have spanned the Berg River at Bridgetown, but who are we to spoil a good story with facts? Another river crossing north of Bridgetown was the Misforand Drift. Misverstand literally means misunderstanding. Today there's a dam there with quite an impressive dam wall, particularly when it overflows, like when we saw it while exploring the bridge story. As can be expected with a name like Misunderstanding, there will be several theories on the origin of the name. One of them says that it becomes clear when looking at the dam wall. Allegedly, the middle part of the dam wall should have been at least 10 meters higher to reach the level of the two side walls. Apparently, the two farmers who funded the building of the dam wall had an argument and it was never completed. However, it's clear that the name originated before the dam was built, so another version sounds more plausible. In order to avoid so-called sheep tax implemented by the colonial government, a farmer divided his flock in two. The two halves were then hidden in different places, and the two shepherds would meet again at an agreed place and time. After missing each other for about 2 months, they finally managed to meet, realizing that due to a misunderstanding, the flocks never arrived at the same agreed point at the same time. It was finally decided to erect the steel bridge about 3 kilometers north of the Misverstand Dam on the farm Vondeling, where it is still in use today. The cornerstone was laid in 1860 and the bridge was officially opened in December 1862. It is interesting that South Africa's oldest bridge was never properly named. During my research for this video, I found the bridge under at least 5 names: Die Brug or the Bridge, the Berg River Bridge, Grootbergrivierbrug, Vondeling Bridge, and Old Iron Bridge. This beautiful bridge is a real hidden gem. It is believed that the stunning stonework onto which the bridge rests came from Klaver. Each stone gets dressed to fit into a very specific spot, an art which you don't find today anymore. To prevent debris from collecting against the pillars, their upstream ends are shaped with sharp points. The 3 sections mentioned can clearly be seen spanning between the 4 pillars. They obviously had to be joined locally after being put into position, an operation that must have been quite an engineering feat in those days. Arc welding as we know it today was only invented in 1881 and only became common practice by the end of that century. Hence, ironwork of the 1880s all still use rivets, as can be seen in this beautiful bridge. The bridge even includes pedestrian walkways on both sides, so it'll be interesting to find out where it was destined to in Australia, probably somewhere where there were many pedestrians. Meanwhile, back at Bridgetown, where Emma Scarbrow since remarried. When their oldest son, named after his father, turned 21, as per the captain's will, the farm had to be divided amongst the 3 children. The daughter, Charlotte Cornelia, was not interested and sold her part to her brother, Henry Ford Scarbrow. Yes, that was his name, who again sold both parts. The oldest son, William Edmund, inherited the part where Bridgetown was on and decided to keep it. After finishing his medical studies in Philadelphia, America, he returned to South Africa to set up his doctor's practice in Bridgetown. With the postal service still operating until 1865, it looked like Scarborough's dream still had a chance of succeeding. However, the final blow for Bridgetown came when nearby Moreesburg was declared a town in 1879. Dr. Scarbrow moved to Riebeek West in 1883 after selling Bridgetown. The new owners later established a school there in a hall that is still there today, with the Scarbrow House being the hostel. This house has since been demolished, with only the foundations visible. The blacksmith shop building also still exists today, although the 170-odd-year-old building is showing its age. Attempts have been made to try and slow down the demise. Another interesting ruin is believed to originally have been the guardhouse to protect the pond. On later maps, it is shown to be stables and was later the chicken coop. Today, Bridgetown lives on, being run as a youth camp, eagerly managed by Ansu Lotter, being able to accommodate up to 100 people, ranging from very basic to comfortable guest houses. Lots of activities are offered depending on the needs of the group. Being a very dark site, we had a few stargazing weekends there already. With Scarbrow not being a common surname in South Africa, I stumbled upon an interesting piece while researching this video. Dr. Scarbrow passed away in 1921, and as per his will, a trust was established at the University of Cape Town, or UCT, which provided bursaries for deserving students. His provisos for who could benefit from the fund was very specific, deemed discriminatory actually. In 1969, UCT did not feel comfortable administering the trust and it was handed to a third party. In 2002, it caught the eye of the Minister of Education, who took it to court. The outcome was that the trust income goes to a few charitable organizations today.